Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir la'inir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Walhamdulillahi alladhi ja'alana minal mutamassikin بولاية أمير المؤمنين والأئمة المعصومين عليهم السلام والحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين حبيب إله العالمين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله عز وجل في كتابه الحكيم وهو أصدق القائلين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هل يسمعونكم إذ تدعون أو ينفعونكم أو يضرون قالوا بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. I begin in the name of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. There is no doubt that it's due to His kindness and generosity that He gives us these opportunities where we gather in remembrance and in glorification of Him Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. Then we send our heartfelt condolences to our 12th and living Imam Al-Hujjah Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And to each and every one of you as we gather this evening to commemorate the istishhad and martyrdom of our fourth Imam Sajjad alayhi afdalu salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we each get an opportunity to go for the ziyarat of our Imam alayhi salam in Baqi, and that we receive his shafa'at in the hereafter, insha'Allah. Today's been an interesting day. So our water in our building got shut off in the morning. So we didn't have water for all day, and then as I was leaving, the electricity in the whole building went. And so we became waterless and powerless, you know. And subhanallah, right? Like you don't realize the reason I even mention it, not for you to feel sorry for me, right? The reason we mention it is that we take these things so much for granted, yeah, by God, right? Like that we take power for granted, right? Like my daughter's like, what do you mean? I can't go on the internet, right? I mean, we've taken these things for granted, and then you reflect on people who really don't have these things, right? And when they do have it, it's a luxury for them, and how we've taken this luxury for a need. You know, it makes us reflect, and it makes us pray that all those who are struggling throughout the world, may Allah alleviate all of their burdens, inshaAllah. Our fourth Imam alayhi salam was born on the 5th of Sha'ban in the year 38 after Hijrah, and his Shahadat happened on the 25th of Muharram on a night such as this in the year 95 after Hijrah. And when we look at the dates, the Imam alayhi salam was approximately 22 years old during Karbala. Right, that this was a grown youth, you would say, but still a man who experienced much of that brutality and that violence. And you know, when you think about it, when we go through traumatic events in our lives, those traumatic events shape our perception and worldview, right? In particular, if, for example, I had to encounter those same people who put me in that traumatic position time in and time again. And there's no doubt, right, that when we look at the life of the Imam alayhi salam, that these events that he saw, these events that he dealt with, that he faced, left an imprint in him. There is no doubt that it left an imprint in him. However, you know that when he became the Imam of the time, he had to now look at the people, whether they were part of those who oppressed his family or whether they were those who assisted his family. He would have to treat them all as his flock. Yeah? He couldn't have said that, no, you did this, I am not your imam, or I will treat you worse than this. Rather, it was his responsibility that whoever came to him for guidance, whether they were guilty of something or whether they were not guilty of something, whether they were part of the oppression that he faced or not, it was his responsibility to treat them in a fair manner, the way God would be pleased with. And I think there's a tremendous lesson in there for us, right? There's an example, and a key example is that of Marwan bin al-Hakam, right? We know the history of Marwan. Marwan was the one who was appointed by Muawiyah as the governor of Medina. He was then taken away, or his title was taken away and then reinstated, and taken away and reinstated by Muawiyah a few times. But it was the same Marwan who prevented, or was one of the people who prevented the body of Imam al-Hasan to be buried. This was the same Marwan who threatened to execute Imam al-Hussein if he did not give bay'ah to Yazid. And then it is the same Marwan, that when the people of Medina overthrew him and they created a revolt, and now he had nowhere to go, you know where he turned to? He turned to Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Yeah? He knocked on his door and said, I need assistance for me and my family. And the Imam alayhi salam welcomed him in. Yeah, he brought in his entire family, and history even tells us he allowed his extended family. So this is now almost a small clan that has come under the protection of the Imam. And then it is the same Marwan who gave Yazid's army instructions on how to attack Medina. Yeah, after all this. So the person never changed, right? But the Imam alayhi salam, as the ruler or as the Imam of the time or the leader, he had that responsibility to look after the people and to make sure that he treated them with respect when they came, regardless of who they were. And I think that, for us, that's a really important lesson in life, right? Because we never know when the tide will turn, and tides will turn, right? Today I may be mazloom, tomorrow I may have a chance of being or getting the upper hand on somebody, and will I then return that back with the same oppression that I faced in my life, right? Simple things, right? Like it could be at work where there was a supervisor who was harassing me. All of a sudden I get a promotion, I became their supervisor. Now do I harass them back the way that they used to harass me? And when you look at the life of the Imam alayhi salam teaches us this very beautiful lesson, right? That no matter what happens, you are never allowed to oppress somebody just because they had oppressed you at one time. And I think it takes a very special person to be able to put that or control that part of them. And I think that's a really important lesson that we can take from his life. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. When I reflect on the life of the Imam alayhi salam, one point that kind of sticks out to me, that I feel would have really bothered the Imam alayhi salam. It's when we say the Imam wept for 25 years, 40 years maybe. I don't think it was just a pure weeping for his father being killed, right? Because now that weeping wasn't an individualistic reaction to an event, but in that he was an imam of the time, right? And so his weeping couldn't have been where you would say, well, this is personal and that's imamah. There is no separation of imamah from personal. You are who you are, right? And I think that one of the reasons why the imam would have wept in this way was really because of the state of the ummah, right? That how could these people, right, who were not that far removed from the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his family, right? Today, like, if somebody would do that, na'udhu billah, you say, okay, 1400 years, Jahiliyat has returned fully, right? But this was a matter of 50 years since the passing of Rasulullah, peace and blessings be upon him and his family. And Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And so how could a group of people be so stubborn, right? How could a group of people be so persistent and obdurate in the way that they acted, where their heart was completely shut from receiving the guidance and the message of the Imam of the time? And this is something I think that would bother him and would bother even the Imam of our time, when guidance is given and all of these things happen, yet we find that we are comfortable in living life the way we have always lived our life, without any desire to change our life for the better. And this is where, my brothers and sisters, that this subject of stubbornness or obduracy is what we have been talking about. This is what we started. That's what we started with last week. And I want to continue this discussion. This is going to be our theme and topic, because it is a characteristic, stubbornness, obduracy, persistence in what we do, that repeats itself in many different areas of life, right? It's not something that just happens in one time or one group of people are stubborn. Rather, stubbornness is a characteristic that affects nearly every segment of society and every nation and every people. But there are times when stubbornness in itself is not harmful, right? We'll give a few very timid examples, but let's say my stubbornness in loving the Lakers, for example. Yeah, I'm a sports fan and I will love the Lakers, and I'm stubborn about it, right? Like you'd be like, Baba, they are terrible. I'm like, I don't mind, right? I don't care. They're my team. I mean, when you look at when somebody is attracted or attached to a sports team like that, it doesn't matter whether they're winning or losing, on top or on the bottom, they will give that commitment to that sports team. And you look at it from a macro level, you'll be like, bro, you're stubborn. Yeah? Like you're so stubborn about this, right? Or for example, my desire or constant stubbornness, I guess, or persistence in getting a double-double every morning from Tim Hortons, right? Rain or shine, snow on the ground, I'm going to stop at Tim Hortons because that's what I do. I'm stubborn about it. Even if the queue is 10 minutes long, I'll be stubborn and I'll stick with it, rather than saying, it's okay if I don't get coffee today, but I'll stick with that stubbornness. These are mild examples, and in general, these forms of stubbornness don't affect society. Right? It's me and my stubbornness, and we deal with it, right? These are some of the things that husbands and wives deal with each other with. This guy is stubborn in this way, and I have to deal with it, and the husband probably says the same about his wife. They don't have a global effect, a societal effect because of that stubbornness. But there are other times when my stubbornness can affect not only me, but it affects the society that I live in. Right? So for example, my stubbornness if I view women as objects, for example, right? And I consider them lower than me in status, and so I will treat them lower than me in status, right? We see this. It's surprising that till today, there are jamaats or communities throughout the world, for example, who don't give women the right to vote in the mosque. Yeah, they'll expect them to work in the kitchen, they will expect them to clean, they'll expect them to do all of these things. But no, you don't get to vote, for example, right? These are things that are archaic beliefs. They're not based on anything. Why don't we give women? Because كَانَ وَجَدْنَا آبَاءَنَا يَفْعَلُونَ. We saw our forefathers not give them the rights to vote. They must have known what they're doing. So we're just sticking to that and continuing with that. It's just an example, right? Or for example, there's a belief that I have that my race is superior to someone else's race. Right? That my color of the skin is better than someone else's skin. These forms of stubbornness are not based on any logic, right? They're not based on any firm belief. Rather, these are based on emotions. These are based on archaic beliefs that get passed down from generation to generation. And in the ilm of akhlaq, this characteristic, right, of stubbornness and persistent belief in something that counters logic and facts, right? Where you can present to them an argument, and this is a completely logical argument. Like, for example, one who believes one's race is superior, you can disprove that in so many ways that what does race have to do with anything, right? But yet, because they have this strong belief and they're stuck in their way, they're stubborn in what they believe in and they don't change. And so in the ilm of akhlaq, this stubbornness, this persistence, even at the face of logic and facts, is known as ta'assub. Yeah? Ta'assub. Ta'assub, what is ta'assub? And we'll come into this discussion today that what is ta'assub. Ta'assub, for example, in a definition given by our fourth Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Lamma su'ila anil Asabiyyah. This is what Asabiyyah is, right? That what is Asabiyyah? He replies that the type of Asabiyyah that is blameworthy, and we'll come to this, that means there is a type of Asabiyyah that is not blameworthy. But he says the type of Asabiyyah which is blameworthy and punishable is an yara ar-rajulu shirara qawmihi khayran min khiyari qawmi akhirin. Yeah? It is to see when a person considers the evil people from their own community to be better and they prefer them over the good people of another community. Yeah? That means I know that there are people who are racist in my community, but hey, we're better than them. Yeah? So I'm going to take the racists in my community over those who claim to be better. Why? Because I know that I am better than them. That's that stubbornness, right? And he continues and he says that it is not considered partisanship or bigotry to love one's own community. It's not, right? Rather, it is a problem, it is bigotry when a person loves them in spite of their wrongdoing and aids them in their work. Right? So I know that they're wrong, but just because they are my race, I must support them. Right? I know that what they're saying is wrong, but just because he speaks my language, I will support them. Right? I know that whatever they're doing is incorrect, but because they're of my community, I will support them, regardless whether they are right or wrong. This action, or is known as ta'assub or asabiyyah. Right? A stubbornness that we have in knowing or thinking that I am right, you are wrong, deal with what I have to do. Right? And this ta'assub is something which is a big hindrance in our getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we will discuss in a bit. What is ta'assub exactly? Ta'assub comes from the root word asaba, ain sad ba. Right? And what does asaba mean? Asaba literally means something which binds or wraps two things together. So for example, a bandage is known as asaba. Right? Why? Because let's say I have this thing that is broken, or I have a cut and I have put a band-aid and it seals that wound and it binds two things or wraps something together. It's known as a bandage, right? It's known as asaba. That is the pure linguistic meaning of asaba. However, based on that, it is then transferred into a meaning of any type of binding or any type of strong cohesion that exists between my thoughts and my actions. Right? Anytime there is a very strong cohesion or link or binding between my thoughts and my actions to what we would call somebody being, for example, really strong-willed. Yeah? Overly opinionated about things. Right? They are, for example, they have strong convictions in what they do. Why? Because they believe in something, and then their actions will carry that belief out. And because there is this strong bind that exists between them, you find then that this action is also known as ta'assub. Right? Coming from the same word of asaba, of binding two things together. Now naturally, right, if we understand that, there are times when ta'assub can be positive. Right? For example, my strong belief in worshipping God. That's my strong conviction, and I'm going to do whatever I can to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I will not allow negative influences to come and dissuade me from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's a very positive form of asabiyyah, right? But generally, asabiyyah is referred to or linked in the negative sense, predominantly. The explanations or the examples of ta'assub being positive, in fact, you would colloquially in Arabic, you would never call somebody who is positively strong-willed and full of conviction as ta'assub. Yeah? Because it is just generally understood to be a negative quality, right? Now why is it generally understood to be a negative quality? Because most of the times, my strong convictions are not based on facts or logic. They are based on emotions. Right? They are based on my personal choices. They are not based on facts. So for example, my strong conviction or love for my sports team, zero facts, right? Zero is not based on any facts. I either like the color of the uniform, or I like, for example, because that's the city I grew up in, or I like a particular player, and so I will have an attraction to that team. But it's not based on any logic. You can't say that, no, my attachment to this team is based on logical facts. No, it's based on emotions. It's based on my own opinions, right? You take, for example, my dislike of a particular race or nationality, right? It's not based on facts, right? I may have had, for example, one bad experience, and the fact is that people who are racist, they themselves have never had the bad experience. Maybe their grandfather had a bad experience, and then that transferred from one generation to a next, and I continue thinking along the same lines, but it's not based on reality, right? The people, for example, who think that Muslims are terrorists, and then they meet a Muslim and they're like, oh, I didn't know. Right? Because they see with their own eyes that this is not a reality. I have just met a group of people who actually have nothing to do with that ideology. And so, like, it's based on things that are just passed on. It's based on my own preferences. I was watching this documentary. It's about a group of villagers in India, and they live in the mountainside, right? And in this village, the women are the rulers of that village. Right? Yeah, mashallah. Yeah. Alhamdulillah, and to that extent where when they get married, right, the husband takes the wife's name. Right? In inheritance, the wife gets full inheritance. The sons don't get inheritance. And so they desire to have girls more than they desire to have boys, because if they have a girl, the girl will inherit everything. Now, great, that's what you believe in, right? Great. But when you listen to the comments, right, the comments that the men were making were that, well, our grandfathers decided this and they must have known what they were doing, so we agree with it. Yeah? Not based on logic. Yeah, not based on facts, not based on anything, but rather this perceived notion that they knew what they were doing, and so we're just continuing what they're doing today, and it moves on. Life moves on this way. And so when you find, right, that because these thoughts that I have are predominantly based on lack of fact or emotion, this ta'assub is generally portrayed as being negative. It's not positive. Never go out and say, I want to be a muta'assib. No, it's not a positive quality, right? And because it's a negative quality, this is what it's translated into. We're coming to the translation now. It's translated into one of three words. It's translated into partisanship, and we'll define what partisanship is, or it's defined as bigotry. Yeah? If you want to know what bigotry means in Arabic, it means ta'assub. Yeah? Or it's defined as fanaticism. Okay? And it's interesting, fanaticism, because again, if you take the sports fan example, what's fan is short of? A fanatic. Yeah? And this is why this idea of a strong link or a bond to something without any fact or logic is applied to them, because they just have a strong emotional attachment. For example, if you look at the book Scales of Wisdom, right? The great hadith book that we have, that I think every single house should have this book, right? It's called Scales of Wisdom. It'd be surprising if you don't have it, but you should have it. It's probably one of the best, one of the better English translation of hadith books that we have. We don't have that many in English. This is one of the better ones. In it, they translate ta'assub or asabiyyah as partisanship. Now, what does partisanship mean? Partisanship means a prejudice in favor of a particular cause. Yeah, I have like a prejudice, right? It's not just like a like to a particular cause. No, I am shutting out everything else, and based on this cause, this is right and everybody else is wrong. It's a prejudice towards a particular cause. In, for example, Ghurar al-Hikam, right? And that's again a great book that to have. It's also translated into English. It's the sayings of Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ta'assub is translated as bigotry. Yeah? Now bigotry means what? An intolerance towards those who hold different opinions than myself. right? So not only is there a prejudice towards a particular cause, but when you add to it, ta'assub means not only do I have a prejudice to a particular cause, but I have an intolerance towards those who believe different than me. That's the power of this word, yeah? That it requires all of these different meanings and translations to get the full idea. Now, you know, we talk about it being a characteristic of ilmul akhlaq, a characteristic that human beings have. Human beings aren't born with ta'assub, right? I'm not born and you be like, man, this kid is stubborn, yeah? You know, sometimes kids are stubborn, but you can't call them muta'assib, and this kid is like, you know, he's a bigot. No, you're not going to call a poor kid a bigot, right? Poor kids are stubborn. There's a difference between these levels of stubborn, and we're going to explain them. So a human being does not automatically go from zero to ta'assub or have asabiyyah. It is developed over time, right? And how does it start? It starts with what's known as taqleedul a'ma. Yeah? Taqleed is what? Taqleed is following, imitation, right? A'ma is what? Blind. Blind following. Yeah? It starts with blind following. Now let's take some examples. Let's say my father and grandfather told me that certain people of skin color are lower than me in status. I believed it. Yeah? I followed it and I saw the way they dealt with them, and I deal with them in a similar manner. Yeah? I think many of us have encountered this, whether it was in Africa or in India or wherever we came from. We judge certain people based on the color of their skin. Why? Because our grandfathers did it, our fathers did it, our mothers talked about it, right? And maybe they weren't having the worst of intentions. But me seeing that has affected the way I view certain races, for example. There's no doubt about that. For example, my father treats my mother like a servant in the house. Olukar, akar, aleao, oluleao, do this, do that, like a servant, yeah? Do this and do that. I see that happening. What's going to happen? I'm going to treat my wife like that. Yeah? Why? Because I blindly followed that same methodology that is given in my house, right? These are examples. For example, if I grow up in a society where women are merely objects, so I can do whatever I want to them. You see what's happening in India right now, right? In India, there is this mass culture ingrained within them of abusing women. Yeah? And I don't want to use a certain word, but of abusing women, right? And you see this happen, for example, if a girl's walking by herself, certain dudes be like, well, that's her fault, right? Certain dudes would be like, no, that's an object. There was this study done, it was in the paper a few weeks ago, where a girl who was originally from India, lived in London. She was doing her master's or PhD, and she went to India, and for her dissertation, she interviewed 100 people in jail for committing these violations, right? And her study resulted in that majority of these people, like in the high 80s or 90s, did not think that they did anything wrong. Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, they said, so what's the big deal? I'll come out and I'll marry her. That's what they thought, that she was there, I took her and I did what I wanted, and now she's probably so desperate that I'll even come out of jail and marry this girl. How do people think like that? Yeah? You can't just say a person just grew up and just watched that or became like that. No, it is ingrained in that society that women are lower than us in status, that women can be treated in any way that we want. Now these examples that I give of blind following are terrible, right? Are horrible examples, but not all examples of blind following are that bad, right? So for example, I grow up and I'm taught that I must practice azadari a certain way. And if I don't practice azadari a certain way, then I'm not a lover of Hussein. What will I do? I will practice azadari in that way. Yeah? Blind following. Our kids do what? Our kids see us doing matam, we do matam. One day I'm in Josh, I take off my shirt, my kid will take off his shirt and do matam. Right? It is something that is natural, that we are blind following. If I grow up in a society or in a culture where they do alam tanda, yeah? And you'd be like, bro, what's alam tanda? I don't know, I saw my dad doing alam tanda. Let's do alam tanda. Yeah? Now, we grow up in this and we do alam tanda. I'm not saying these are, as I said, these are not examples which are bad. Yeah, these are forms of azadari that we are doing. But really, if you ask somebody, why do you do this way? Why do you have an alam? Right? Why do you do alam tanda? Why do you take off your shirt? I don't know, I saw my father doing it. Yeah? I don't know, I saw my grandfather doing it. Right? Please, yeah? I'm not saying these are bad things. I'm giving us examples that when we do something, there is an entire generation of kids, generation of people who are watching us. And what they will do is that they will imitate what we have done. Right? They will, because blind imitation is something that happens in every facet of life. So it starts off like this, right? Where I begin to imitate blindly in what I am doing. Now the above examples are not bad on their own, these two that I gave, right? Of azadari, of alam tanda. I got no issues with this. I grew up with alam tanda, right? I got no issues with this at all, right? You want to do it, Baba, right? But it becomes a problem when this blind following turns to what's known in Arabic as inad. You know what inad is? Inad is obduracy, right? And that's how, again, you go back to the books of hadith, they use these fancy words for some reason. What is obduracy? Obduracy means to stubbornly refuse to change one's opinion. Yeah? Even at the face of logic or facts, no. Hame zamanati alam thanda kera che hame karsu. Yeah, why? Why are we? Because I said we're doing it. That's now a problem. Yeah? Why do we do matam this? Because we do it. Yeah? We are Husseini, we will take off our... What is that? Yeah? You are giving me an emotional answer. Give me a logical answer. Yeah? In any time, my brothers and sisters, if we cannot provide a logical answer for what we are doing, it means that we are practicing in that footsteps of blind following, which is turning into stubbornness. Yeah? Obduracy, inad. Right? Inad to that extent where now if somebody else comes to me with another opinion, I'm going to shut them down. And why am I? Tame bacha ne kai khabar nati. You kids don't know anything. You kids don't have the respect. You kids don't have the love. You kids don't have this and that and that and that. Right? Why? How did that happen? It graduated. Yeah, I graduated in my stubbornness. I was doing something and I kept doing it because it was happening in the society, and I got to a stage where now I felt that this is part of deen, for example. This is part of life, for example, right? And again, I'm giving examples close to home. But these are things that happen throughout society, right? And we'll give some examples just to make sure that I'm not picking on anybody here, right? But the reality is that once this stubbornness continues, it is after this stubbornness continues for a little while that now I reach the stage of ta'assub, yeah? Where now I have bigotry. Bigotry what? You don't do it my way, I can't stand you. Yeah? You don't do it my way, you are wrong. Tame jahannami cho. Yeah? You're going to Jahannam. Yeah, that you don't do it this way. You don't do it the way I do it. You guys don't have the love for Hussein. What is this, right? It's become a sense of partisanship now. You look at how azadari is done today, right? It's amazing. Let's leave azadari for a second. It's getting too hot in here, right? But you see that people who have this type of bigotry or partisanship will never accept something. And sometimes you wonder that, are they lying to themselves, right? For example, you take people who deny climate change, right? And you ask yourself, how? How can you deny climate change, right? And they'll be like, there is no global warming. You saw the winter we had? And that's the argument, right? That, oh my God, we had so much snowfall, right? And then you show them charts and you show them, they're like, no. How did that, you ask yourself, right? Like, are they either lying to themselves, or they have drank the Kool-Aid so much, yeah, that they can't see anything else. Right? You look at these Republicans and all of these people and you wonder that how can they argue for a position that they know is false? Science has proven it's false, right? And yet they're not willing to change or maneuver around that. You look at, for example, the whole gun violence issue in America, right? You would honestly think, right? Honestly, like people, we're laughing, but honestly, right? What do I need an AK-47 semi-automatic for? Yeah? I have a right. Why? The forefathers told me I have a right. Yeah? That is like the best example of partisanship and bigotry and ta'assub that we can give. They see that nearly every 2 days, over 160 Americans die of gun violence. 160, yeah? Every 2 days, there's some report I read a couple of days ago. Yet they say, no, there is no issue with gun violence, right? No, the way you solve this issue is how? More guns, yeah? Everybody else, if the other people who got shot and killed had guns, then this wouldn't have happened. You look at this logic, yeah? You look at this logic and you ask yourself, Baba, how? Yeah? How?
Nuclear weapons.
Yeah, nuclear weapons. Yeah, now you're confusing me, yeah? But it's true, you're right. No, you're right. He's increasing, yeah, you're increasing the arsenal, right? Like how many times do we need to destroy each other? Once is enough, one bomb is enough, right? But you think about this, that how did we reach that position, right? It's not something that I just woke up and said, no, I'm going to stick to guns. No, I saw blind following, right? I'm a Republican, I must love guns. I grew up in here, I have a right to carry arms. And now you tell me I don't have, who are you to tell me I don't have a right to carry? And now to that extent where they'll argue about why having guns is actually a positive. Right? And the same thing, my brothers and sisters, when we look, for example, at the certain ways we do azadari, we commemorate, right? Last night, I was watching a clip of a man, right? I don't want to give too much away, right? Of this man defending zanjir and tatsbir, right? And the argument was that don't you agree, and this is the argument that I gave, right? That don't you think that it gives a bad image to Islam, right? When somebody watches that and they'll be like, man, that's not something that I'm attracted to, you know? Just from that perspective, put aside the legality. I'm not concerned about the legality. I'm concerned about optics, right? How can a person argue the optics of that and say, no, it doesn't matter, it still promotes Islam in a positive way? I don't see how you could, right? But he said, well, a lot of things give Islam a bad image, like hijab. So should we stop wearing hijab? Yeah? You see the ridiculousness of the argument? Yeah? You took something that is not even in the realm of halal or haram, and you took it to something that is hijab and say, well, hijab gives a bad name. No, since when did hijab give a bad name to Islam? Right? He said fasting gives a bad name because parents call, schools call and say, how can you, so should we stop fasting? And you find that people who have this asabiyyah about their line of thinking will justify their asabiyyah in any form or way possible. Right? Because they want to do what they want to do, and it has developed itself into such an extent, right, that they will create illogical arguments which will seem logical to them, right? Same thing that an addict does, right? If somebody is addicted to something, they will justify it in their mind. No, I'm strong enough to quit, this helps me get closer to God, blah, 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 right? But they know in reality it's not allowed, but they're justifying it to themselves. Asabiyyah has a similar connotation to it. When one reaches that stage of such stubbornness, that they are not willing to listen to anybody else, they're not willing to entertain any other discussions, and not only that, they will judge you for what you are doing, they will call you less than them for what you are doing. This is known as ta'assub. And we find that in the ilm of akhlaq, ta'assub is one of the greatest obstacles to submission to the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Why? Why? Because what is submission? Submission means that I put my own thoughts and desires aside for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if I know I am right, yeah, and I am not changing for anybody, how will I ever submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Yeah? How will I ever submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? This is why Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he says, Man kana fi qalbihi habbatun min khardalin min asabiyyah ba'athahu Allahu yawm al-qiyamati ma'a a'rabil jahiliyyah. Yeah? He says, one whose heart contains even a mustard seed worth of bigotry or partisanship, yeah, will be raised on the day of judgment with the Arab Jahiliyyah. Yeah? Why? Because when the Prophet came, what did they say? Kana wajadna aba'ana We saw our forefathers doing it. Who are you to tell us something different? Right? And this is something that I think we have to be very careful about. Inshallah, I think the next program is on Thursday. We'll continue this discussion. We'll give Quranic examples of how God has warned us about this. And then inshallah continue down this line of trying to make sure we don't have it and rectifying it, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And as I said, like if we understand it from this perspective, right, we can see why it affected our Imam alayhi salam in this way. Yeah? That as long as this Asabiyyah existed within the hearts of people, no form of advice, no form of guidance, no form of anything would help in rectifying the hearts and the minds of these people. Right? And this is why you would find the Imam alayhi salam lament the way he lamented. But you know, there is no doubt he had reason to lament as well. The musibah that the Imam alayhi salam saw, may no son have to see what he saw for his father. You know, it is said on the day of Ashura, the Imam alayhi salam went to his sister Zaynab, and she said, Zaynab, it is time for me to go now. But before I go, come with me to wish my son Sajjad farewell. This was the final time Imam Sajjad alayhi salam saw his father. The khutbah states that when he came to the Imam alayhi salam, the Imam looked at him. The Imam, it is said, did not recognize his own father because of all the blood and the stains that were on him. He looks at him and he is awoken from his sleep, and he sees the Imam alayhi salam in this way. And the first thing they say, he asks is, Ya Abata, Aina Ammi Abbas? That where is our uncle Abbas? Why are you in this state? Why are you going through all this difficulty? The Imam alayhi salam looks at Zaynab, tears begin to come in the eyes of Zaynab alayhi salam. The Imam says, oh my son, Abbas is no more. Abbas went to the river Furat and had his hands cut off, and his body is laying by that river. The Imam alayhi salam asked his father, Ya Abata, Aina Akhi Aliyun al-Akbar? He says, where is my brother Aliyun al-Akbar? Aina Akhi Qasim? Where are all the male relatives? Imam al-Hussein replies back, O Sajjad, besides you and I, there are no other male relatives alive. They tell us, he says, oh Auntie Zaynab, where is my sword? Allow me to go. This is that responsibility of one who is loyal to their Imam. Imam al-Hussein stops him and says, my son Sajjad, after me you will be the Imam of our Ummah now. And he says to him, Sajjad, when you meet my Shia, tell them how thirsty your father was in Karbala and how he died all alone. It is said after the Shahadat of Aba Abdullah, when the Mal'uneen came to trample his body with horses, Zaynab alayhi salam rushes to the khayma. She says, Sajjad, wake up! Sajjad, wake up! I hear a sound that I have not heard before. They say it is a sound as if bottles are cracking. Sajjad says, oh my Aunt Zaynab, these are not bottles cracking. These are the ribs of my father cracking under the hooves of the horses. Wa Sajjada. The end of Sajjad was not just here. He saw the brutality of Kufa. He saw the brutality of Sham. And he continued his lamentation till he came back. It is said once Abu Hamza Thamali comes to visit the Imam. He says to him, Sayyidi, ma hadha al-buka? Oh Sayyidi, what is this crying that I see you in? Alam yuqtal ammuka Hamza? Alam أَلَمْ يُقْتَلْ جَدُّكَ عَلِيٌّ بِالسَّيْفِ. He says, is not your uncle Hamza, was he not a shaheed? Was Ali ibn Abi Talib not a shaheed? He said, إِنَّا الْقَتْلُ لَقَتْلَ لَكُمُ الْعَادَةِ وَكَرَامَتُكُمْ مِنَ اللَّهِ الشَّهَادَةِ. He says, but qatl and martyrdom is a sunnah for you, O Ahlul Bayt. The Imam alayhi salam looks at him. He says, Shakar Allah sa'ayak ya Aba Hamza. He says, may Allah reward you, O Aba Hamza. Indeed, what you say is true. Shahadat for us is a sunnah. We will all die as shaheed. But O Aba Hamza, have you ever seen, or has your eyes ever heard, your ears ever heard, that women and children from our family were taken as prisoners? He says, oh Aba Hamza, every time I see my aunt Zainab, I can see her running from one tent to another, trying to put out the fire and trying to make sure the children are safe. When the poison affected the body of our fourth Imam alayhi salam, and he took his last breaths in this world, the Sajjad Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam gave ghusl to the body of the Imam. It is said in the way of doing the ghusl, all of a sudden Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam started wailing out loud. The companions came to him, Ma yabkika yabna Rasulillah, what is making you cry, Abna Rasulillah? He says, Abki lima ara min athar al-jami'a allati wudiyat ala sadri. He says, as I was doing ghusl of my father, I saw the alamat of the chains that were put on his neck and on his chest. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ وَالْعَاقِبَةُ لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Matam ya Hussein.